A
Hey,
court case that has left the fans with more questions than answers. The legal complexities that continue to envelope this club show no signs of going away and have left us all on the edge. One week we're talking about possible playoffs, the next we're talking about possible expulsion from the actual league. When will this utter madness end? Here to try and make sense of all of it, I guess, is me, obviously. I'm
yep.
here, and Ross as well.
Bizarre start to things because at the same time, if you're not watching the YouTube show, he's got a big happy birthday banner right behind him as well. So this was a very bizarre start to the podcast.
Let's do the basics. We're episode 413. We are very thankful as always to ZC Said Films. If only, we the club had had their kind of commitment to in terms of what they give us, from the owners and everyone else involved. So yeah, it's an absolute mess. Um, and we are very, very grateful for their support in these incredibly troubled times. We've said it before, we'll say it again. It feels like since we've taken over the pod, it's just been one downward thing,
Yeah.
dip.
Well,
So
that's our fault. So sorry, listeners. But anyway, we'll piece through this nonsense.
yeah. Look, we're going to try and make sense of all of this in the recap, which we're going to do right now. Right. We're on episode 413. 13 is unlucky for some. Um,
It's good that
look,
it all happened during international break, though, right? Like at
I
least we don't
suppose
have other
so.
stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, look, it's probably been the most difficult pod to put together in terms of just gathering the information for it.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah.
where are we? Where physically are we in terms of what has actually happened? Um, I, the court case was Friday,
Yeah, we're gonna go
so
court case then accounts, right?
we're
That's
going to go
the
court
way we're gonna
case
do today. All right.
and then accounts. So basically, what I can interpret, and I've had to pull in a lot of favors from a lot of people to kind of paraphrase this for me because I didn't watch the court case. I mean, I never thought I'd say that about our football club, but here we are. The club can be sold. The club is allowed to be sold. The injunction from that court case at that time was not removed. Diane Coig got clear instruction that an escrow solution should be sought and would work. So make sure you do that, basically. Coig wants 12 million, and there needs to be a hearing to determine how much he'll get. Could be £0, could be 12 million in terms of what he's asking for. Coig is seemingly worried that if Dye sells the club and gets all the money, he'll never see any of it, even if he wins the case. That's what I've interpreted so far. Then there's the EFL letter, the small fact that they're basically saying we could get chucked out of the league. The Reading lawyer, so our lawyer, disclosed that on the 11th of February, the EFL wrote to the club disqualifying Dye and saying he has until the 4th of April to divest his ownership or they could kick Reading out of the league.
Yeah. Yeah. If he's still the
Um,
owner at that
if
time,
he's
then
if he's still the owner.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think Tim Diller was saying that they would be not allowed to play games, I think, if Dai
Okay.
Younger was still the owner. I think that we are of the opinion that, the EFL may move that deadline if things are going on with the Robert Platek sale. And we'll talk about, whether the accounts might have anything to do with that later. Um, but yeah, the long and short of it, we said that Friday might be an interesting day for the club last week. It was, but the club lost their injunction. It
Yeah.
is good, like you said, that the judge doesn't think that this holds up the sale of the club necessarily. Rob Couig was on an EFL Today podcast yesterday, I think it was. I was just listening to very oddly Joe Jacobson's podcast out in the US with another member. I believe that the guy who's he's hosting it with is the guy who you remember like a year and a half back I went on Five Live and spoke to Joby and Sir John Medeski and those guys and I'm pretty sure the guy who's hosting this podcast
He was
was
involved in that.
also hosting that show. Yeah. So it's just a very odd situation I thought that it was a kind of interesting summary of the case and stuff like that. You know, the first business day after the case, and Coeg's immediately on a podcast, kind of like giving his opinion and things like that. And you know, I'm not going to comment on my opinions on his opinion or anything like that. But I thought that the most interesting thing that he said was that I don't roll over for anyone, which you know, I think a lot
Yeah, I mean,
dangerous
we'll
stuff. You
come
got to
to
be
that in a
careful.
minute. Like, we'll come to that in a minute. I mean, just going back to Die. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah, please.
basically, if he's disqualified on the 4th of April, he has 30 days to sell his share of the club, which is the 4th of May, which is also Star Wars Day, weirdly.
Right.
So I guess really, and I've really struggled with this. Like, I'm not going to lie to you. Like, I've found it really difficult to A, keep up, and B, work out my level of panic and worry and kind of severity of, oh my God, this is horrendous. I guess the key things are, do you think we will get expelled from the league? That's the first question.
No, I don't think that we will. I think the general vibe of the last three business days, let's call them. We're recording this on Tuesday, March 25th, listeners, is that things appear to be progressing somewhat. I would say in the background, in my opinion. That's a very much an opinion thing because, like you said, it's difficult to put this like agenda and everything together because we're not lawyers, we're not judges,
It's
we're not
impossible.
yeah, we're not
Yeah.
really built for this sort of thing. So, the general vibe I've gotten in the last few days is, I mean, that things can still progress and maybe are progressing behind the scenes. And if Kuig is worried that, you know, he's not going to get any money out of, you know, the situation that he's set up, he may be saying that because he feels that a sale may be near and he needs to have that protection there before that happens so that he doesn't then lose any chance at getting because I think that's been part of his worry along is that the die will make off with the money and there will never be anything
Which,
for
which
his claim.
I think is fair, personally. If he legitimately feels that he is owed money, right?
Yeah.
Then forget that we're fans of Reading Football Club from an objective point of view, he clearly had a case,
Yeah,
right?
I think
Because
he feel
he
in
won the
the
case.
right and in the period that he was, you know, loaning money to the club and things like that. I believe that, you know, the money that he had loaned the club was paid back, but obviously there are still things that you will never necessarily see back. You know,
Mm.
or it wasn't like the money for the club, it was
Yeah,
the
yeah,
money for the attorneys and the money for all of
yeah.
these kinds of things. I think when you hear I could have made 12 million profit, you know, from the club or whatever. It sounds ridiculous to Reading fans because we're like, mate, as we'll talk about with the accounts, we lose more than double that every single year. What are you talking about? But, you know, like the way these things work, I can understand how they can put together arguments, I suppose.
And I guess the other thing really from a black and white point of view, and it's a growing possibility at the moment. Would you rather have Coig or no club?
I
Like, we might be faced with that particular choice,
feel like,
right?
yeah, I have been a little bit concerned that the date by which the club needs to be sold maybe after the exclusivity ends
Mm.
or something like that but again like things there are other little like signs going on in the background that things may be moving so I guess like I don't think we'll end up in that position even though even today on this podcast Kuig was kind of talking about you know, they'd love to be negotiating something else with the club, which I'm sure to them is still, you know, he still wants to buy it. Um, yeah, I think if that is the only solution, then that's the solution that we'll take. And look, Wickham are doing okay, so it can't be the worst thing in the world to be owned by Rob Kuig. But this whole saga certainly hasn't painted him in the most glowing light for Reading fans, I would say.
And I think this has gone on so long now that the only say the only positive, that's not quite right, but a positive to come out of it is that there is an end in sight to all this. And so by May the 4th,
So
something
soon.
significant will have happened, whether we are owned by a person and it could be someone completely different to who we've been talking about, in the last few weeks. Dye will be gone and we could be kicked out of the league.
I think one of
So
the other
something
possibilities, sorry, Ben, I was just going to say, I think one of the other possibilities, though, is that, there's some way to make almost nothing change by, what if Dai Younger was to transfer his holdings to his sister? Or what if he was to
that
transfer holdings to Reddit RFC Bearwood, put the holdings of the club in a different entity into a different name or something like that, fulfill the
uh,
EFL's requirements.
is a really, really good point because that's something that has been raised on social media. That's something that has been uh, touted, I guess, and that for me would be the worst case scenario in all of this because he's still around, but
Mm.
it's just in a different format. It's like it's just they're just rebadging it basically. That's
Yeah, yeah,
that's what that is. So if it goes to his sister, if it goes to the Bearwood Holdings, whatever, he's still involved. He's just not there physically
yeah,
and named legally, and that's a massive problem. So for me, whilst I'm kind of doing the whole devil's advocate thing, going Coig or no club and being kicked out of the league, that's that's just perpetually keeping the problem going if he chooses
yeah,
one of those options, which he could do. But no one knows. This is why it's the whole thing, and I had to stop myself over the weekend because I was going to do a video, like a little reaction video like I do with games and stuff. And I thought I've got nothing else to add.
yeah,
What
yeah,
beyond
yeah.
what other people have said, I have literally zero to add. Like I have opinions on it, obviously, and I have feelings towards it, but actually, I
There's
can't chuck
opinions.
anything else that's different, really.
There's opinions I have as a Reading fan and opinions I have as the pod host for sure. Like there are definitely opinions that I keep to myself, on here because they just don't
Yeah.
need to be out there. Like I'd rather be talking about football and all these kinds of things. But generally what you just said, I just I just don't have an opinion anymore. Like I don't have anything to add. In a lot of these cases, we just want this stuff to be over. And yeah, I guess that's where I'm at. So like I feel for Koeg a little bit because I think he has been made to look like the villain by Dai Young, who is clearly the actual villain here.
Mm.
Um, but at the same time, the longer that he stays present in the story, he's not going to be able to save his, reputation or PR move, his reputation with Reading fans. It's not going to work because of how social media is basically and how the fan base, thinks about these things. So I just think that, yeah, hopefully, he is satisfied by, what's happened with the court case and once things with Platek are ready to go, then we can sort it out as a club. But you just don't really know, do you? That's the problem.
It's we thought we had this pod wrapped up in terms of okay, this is what we're going to do, and it was delayed by 24 hours because Ross is incredibly selfish.
Right.
But
Yep. Sure.
what then happened this morning was that the accounts were dropped just
Yeah.
like that.
Out of nowhere.
And when when I saw the messages come through and the tweet, I literally just lolled because I thought
Get them
it
out
is
there.
just
6 days
honestly
before they're due. Like, oh,
it,
they're a year old or whatever.
I can't I don't have yeah.
It,
I mean, do you want to talk us through briefly what the
sure.
account said for those people that
I'll run you through
might
the
not have seen it?
accounts. And it cracked me up no end that this is the accounts for the 22-23 season, which was the season we got relegated.
Are you
Um,
gonna are you gonna say something like there is minus money?
There is there's definitely minus money. All the things that you expected, kind of were in the dropping of the account. So look, yeah, Reading were under a transfer embargo for like 6 months, maybe longer, because they did not submit their accounts for the 22-23 season in time. Now, look, I think we know that was probably a decision made by the club, and I think that it's possible that members of the club, took risk on themselves and their own careers to do that because I think that There was an we haven't really talked about the accounts this year, but they have been in a bubbling under thing kind of that they haven't been there. So the accounts have now been posted. They've been submitted about 12 months late. So Reading are out from underneath that embargo. They will be back under it in 6 days' time if they do not submit their accounts for last season, the 23-24 season. So 6 days before they could be chucked back onto that embargo page, Reading have posted up those accounts. But there had been suspicion that those are being kept for a long time for some reasons, which you can kind of look into yourself. I think that what we're looking at here is really a kind of symbolic clearing of the books. I want to hope that's what we're looking at. RFC Bearwood and other Die Younger properties related to Reading also posted their accounts. So this wasn't just the club. This was the club and all of the assets that, so Bearwood would be sold along with the club in an ideal world. If you do remember, because it has been quite a while since we've talked about accounts, but we were lucky enough to kind of like talk with Kieran Maguire a couple times about those. Back in the day, one of the big issues for Reading was the wage bill and making too much of a loss off that. So this was again the final championship season. Reading made a pre-tax loss of 21.7 million pounds. So again, the idea of making $12 million profit in a league below that is, I'm sure somebody can show me how that works, but it is quite interesting. This is actually
Yeah.
a slightly smaller loss than the previous season. But wages still a huge issue. Wages were more than the entire revenue of the club in that particular year. So definitely still an issue. We don't know what the case is now in League One. There's obviously a lot of different players on the books now. This is still a year when Tom Ince was on the books. I think Rinomota was on the books. Laurent, like a lot of players like that maybe cost a decent amount of money. So it'd be quite interesting to see where those wages are now. But at least as of 22-23, Reading were still in a position, even after, 2.5 years of squad detriment, from not being able
Mm.
to buy players. They were still in a place whereby they were paying more in wages than they were getting in revenue. So yeah, that's the accounts. They're out. They are bad again. Reading lost quite a lot of money in the 22-23 season. And again, they will be back in embargo in 6 days' time if they don't submit accounts for 23-24. I find it hard to believe that they will do that. However, obviously, you got to get the 22-23 ones out before you do the 23-24 ones. You can't just skip a year. And so I wonder if this, the optimist in me says, is this them clearing house, getting those accounts done to then get the next set of accounts done so that we can actually make the sale? Do things need to be up to date with that so that we can hand things over in one clean go, basically? So again, in the same way that I'm not a legal scholar, I'm certainly not an economic or financial scholar or anything like that. But that is what's going on. The headlines are out of an embargo for 6 days. All Reading company accounts, published, posted, RFC Bearwood and all that kind of stuff, and a pre-tax loss of 21.7 million pounds. A lot of money to run a football club these days.
I think really this is this the lowest that I guess what I'm trying to say is like have things been worse than this? I think probably the training ground was kind of ground zero for a lot of fans. And I
You're talking
think
about the whole situation, not just the
yeah,
accounts,
just
right?
the
I was
whole
because the
situation.
accounts
And
we've lost more money in other
yeah, but
years for sure.
we, it's by the by. I think, obviously the concern is that it's taken that long to get them out.
Mhm.
That's really the really frustrating thing about it. And it just seems so, from a very uneducated football finance point of view, as I have, it just seems like such an easy thing to do. Can you give me your accounts? Yeah, they're there. Like, why has it taken so long to get that information out there when there are other clubs in our position that lose way more money than
Yeah.
we do? We and that's we could go off on a tangent and talk about the general state of football and how people run their football clubs. But in terms of us, that's not a great deal of money to lose as a football club at that level at that time, really. So, there's that element of it. But with our fans being put through the ringer in terms of them literally having to log into Teams and watch a court case about our football club, the whole situation around how the club has been handled and mismanaged or not handled, it, it has really led. There's like almost like a desensitized, situation with this where it's like, oh yeah, we'll just log on to Teams and watch a court case. Like, when you stop and take a breath and think about it, and because we've had no football to focus on, it's insane that
Like,
this is actually what is happening, right?
but this is
It's
a yeah,
insane.
you're right. Like you're right, but this is a year after like us all going into like council plans for Bearwood and stuff like that.
Mm.
So I get, yeah, you're right. Like we're just used to doing weird stuff now. But is it the Shrimpers? Is that Southend?
Yeah.
Who have also been having ownership troubles too, and they're down the guy's house on a Friday night or like whatever. Like like you get drawn into some weird situations
Yeah.
doing all this kind of stuff. I think I'm going to end up calling this podcast "Baseless Speculation," the podcast. But I do wonder if when Reading, if the situation with trying to eventually turn down Rob Couhig's bid and move away from that, I do wonder if the club underestimated how much Couhig would fight back on that point. It does
Mm.
seem to me like a lot of energy and effort has been expended by the club in the last 6 months just dealing with the Couhig case and stuff like that. So we talked about, I feel like we had a chat, and maybe it was me talking to Adam and Greg back in December, talking with Yuan Yang, talking about the kind of like how Yuan Yang's understanding of Chinese heritage has kind of
Mm.
helped with some of the sell before we die things. And there was some sort of suggestion that perhaps the way in which Couhig was acting before he took over the club did not go down well with Dai in particular. From the podcast today, that Couhig did, he suggested that I don't think he's ever spoken to Dai Younger, so they don't have any kind of relationship or whatever like that. Again, we're all taking this from the word of one man, obviously.
Mm.
But I do wonder if one man made a decision, I don't want to sell to this guy anymore because my pride has been hurt. And the entire football club has then had to spend this whole year now basically dealing with Rob Couhig for Dayonga, so it's just another piece of nonsense brought down by and yet another person who doesn't understand how football works in the United
Yeah.
Kingdom. So yeah. Anyway, baseless speculation. The podcast. This
It,
is kind of something I was wondering about why the accounts came out so late because the people who deal with a lot of this kind of financial stuff have had their minds completely on the Couhig
mm.
case this year. Baseless
I guess
speculation.
really to wrap up what this is, like, how do you
What is
feel?
this?
Yeah, or whatever this recap is, how do you feel currently?
I mean, I feel slightly optimistic because I think that it is a symbolic. I think it is a somewhat something's moving again. Like, like something was going on when we last saw things going on in Company's House in July
Mm.
2024, and things were moving, and then they were just cut and stopped again for whatever reason. I'm not going to do another piece of baseless speculation right here. I'm feeling vaguely optimistic. I like that there's a end date thing on it with April 4th, even if, that results in potential expulsion, or as James Earnshaw called it, and I did find quite funny, extinction. Which love you, James. Sorry, that's not me being mean. Sorry, I liked it. No, I just think that like obviously that kind of like puts the rustles your jimmies and all those kinds of fun things, but like no, I think something's going on. Something's moving is my silly optimistic hope, basically. You
It's
you don't feel the same?
I don't know how I feel. I don't know. Like I'm always trying to think about, okay, what's the worst case scenario? And I think I think for me, when I saw the news about being threatened with expulsion from the league, you don't just go, all right, good one. Like it does something to you as a fan. Like it's one of those where
Yeah.
you go, that's pretty significant, isn't it? Like if you're in a court of law and someone's going, right, actually, if you don't do this, you're going to get thrown out of the league.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, for
that's
sure.
quite that's not a kind of idle, well, stop it, otherwise we'll take
No,
your
that's actually a
PlayStation.
really good point. I definitely felt the pit of my stomach, when I first read some of those words in
Yeah.
there. Before I fully understood what might be going on, there were definitely some words in there. I think I just sent like the article to my wife with the caption, "The vibes are atrocious,"
Yeah,
or
yeah,
something
yes,
like that.
yeah, because
Which,
they are,
yeah.
and and to be fair, that summary of the court case, came from Niall, who a lot of you will know, and I can because I knew he was watching. I said, look, what can you do as like a paraphrase thing, and he's on X like drawing mock pictures of courtroom situations with Reading's lawyer and co-ex, and
Oh,
it's hilarious, but it's also deeply troubling. And I think after this is done, there is going to be a real scarring of the fan base in terms of what has come close. And yeah, I don't know how I feel, to be honest. I feel really sad about a
yeah.
lot of things. But then I felt sad about the club for a long time. It's not the club that we all
Ever
kind of
since
grew
Chris
up with.
Gunter left, it's not the club that
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
knows
Yeah.
anymore.
But like I feel really sad. I feel really sad. But I want that sadness to come to an end because ultimately, we've all seen the potential of the club. What are we like? We're celebrating Leicester Day
Yeah.
today, like 2000 and what, five, six,
Oh God,
2006.
this is bad. What's Leicester Day? Is that the day we went up?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Is that they want to? I just think of 106 as like one big season. I wasn't like in the ground every week like you guys at that stage, so I don't think I have the memory of that one quite so clearly. Southampton away is the big going up
Big
game
one.
for me. Yeah, that's
But
the
like,
big one.
and you're looking at all the stuff that the club have put out on social media, and I guess to raise spirits, and rightly so. But
See, that's
19
something that
years
also makes
ago,
me a little bit optimistic and positive. Is that like, does it not seem that there are some things that clubs do appearing again on Reading's, profiles and things like that, which speaks to resources, in my opinion.
19 years ago, we were promoted to the Premier League for the very first time.
Yeah, yeah, it
And
is a
and what
very
what are we
different world.
talking about now? Like we're on a podcast talking about possible expulsion from the league.
Yeah,
Like that does something to you as a fan, right? It
it's
it does something to you.
it's
So
really interesting what you say about the scar and the fan base and stuff like that. Like I wish we'd spoken to a Bolton fan or a like a Portsmouth fan or someone at the time, just to kind of like get a sense. Because I bet supporting Portsmouth as a young, like if you're a young teenager now, supporting Portsmouth must be a very weird thing where you probably perceive yourself as a very, lower league club or whatever, but you've got these people around you telling you about, the Limvoy Primus and Kanu era and all that kind of good stuff. So it
yeah,
must just be
and
very
it's
weird for people, even like Ryan and Tom, for us to tell them about, remember when we had all this kind of stuff and
yeah,
like
yeah,
my like prime time watching Reading has kind of like coincided with the up and then the down. But those guys who have just had downs, yeah, it's going to be a very interesting. I think that the joy that you will get from that particular section of the fan base in particular, when we're back at it and winning leagues again, will be, I don't know, it will be very interesting to see.
I still think this will resolve itself. I still think I still think we'll get a new owner. I think one of the positives around the club is that it's always been attractive. There's always been people interested in sniffing around and having sensible conversations. Well, I say sensible conversations, but concrete conversations.
Is it still as
Um,
attractive now that Sam Smith, the most attractive man in Berkshire, is not there anymore? And is Harvey Nibbs now the most attractive man in Berkshire?
difficult,
Yeah,
difficult to say that.
tough. I had heard that they lived together, so I was I we have been
I watched Sam
wondering.
Smith and Harvey Nibs, did they?
That was something I'd heard. Is that what you understand as well?
Mm,
So I don't know,
I
like
don't know. I knew they were mates. I didn't realize they were like
must be a
roommate,
bit
not
weird.
mates, but flatmates or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. Cat's headcanon is that Harvey Nibs and Sam Smith are lovers, and then one of them moving to Wrexham has sort of caused a tiff in the a lovers' quarrel.
Is that why Nibsy steps
Yeah,
up with his goal scoring? Like he's
yeah.
just like, I'll do it all now. Don't worry about that. I'll
Yeah,
sort it all
all
out.
right, Sam. Like, I'll just get on with it then. Yeah. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, the
I don't
joys
know.
of
I don't know.
anyway.
I mean, in the midst of all this, we've got a game on Saturday.
Yeah,
We're playing Bosch.
yeah,
So should we? I mean, I looked at the mailbag. I mean, there's not, you know, RFC Martyr. Um, would you be happy to have Coig at the helm of the club? We've kind of already covered that, really. Like
yeah,
the objectiveness in me says yes because I'd rather have a club, and you know that's just the reality of it. Like I don't, as much as it might be brilliant in the long run, setting up a Phoenix club is not easy,
yeah,
and going through that rigmarole of moving grounds, everything else, like it's going to be significant if we get to that point. So yeah, obviously,
yeah,
I wouldn't be delighted, but I would also be realistic about the fact that if that's the only man that's going to save the club, then we crack on with it.
yeah. I
Um,
would be concerned, and I have had some concerns in general, but yeah, no, you just push ahead with what you can get. And look, I can't deny
exactly.
that he left Wickham in a better place than he found it. Like I can't deny that. I have some concerns from the kind of perspective I have of hanging, talking with a lot of Americans and talking with a lot of British people, that the way in which he talks about these English football clubs concerns me a little bit because he talks about
Yeah.
them like they are American franchises, and that concerns me a little bit, but that's my own
Mm,
personal opinion. At the end of the day, like I think if he did take it, there'd be a lot of sour milk for Reading fans to drink to kind of get through that, like initial distaste about having someone who has kind of put us through the rigmarole for the last, however long. I know he'll say it's, the club and Di Younger who have done that. So
mm,
it's up in the air whether that is the case. There is, of course, the idea that it's better to go with the devil you know. We don't know much at all about Robert Platek and what could happen there. And there are certainly some interesting stories out of Italy, where he's, been an owner previously. But I do think that a clean break is something that the most of the fan base are looking for at this point.
yeah, for sure. Loyal Royal. What's the earliest decade you can see us winning the Champions League?
I love that. Okay, I was waiting for you to go League One, and I was like, okay, yeah, yeah, sure, League One, like
It
next
goes
year,
on to
year after.
say,
Go ahead.
I think this decade is pushing it, so we'll have to go with the 2030s.
Yeah, yeah. That's fair. That's fair. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to pick up Elise and Bino Gittins and those kinds of players again one day? Wouldn't
Yeah.
that be nice? Be in that situation.
Um,
My. Champions League. That did crack me up.
yeah, it's got to be. I mean, what are we, 2025 now? Yeah, so yeah, it's going to be pushing it, I think, isn't it?
I'm gonna
5 years.
make you a prediction right now. For any Reading fan, anyone listening to this, you will never watch your club play in the Champions League ever. I am 30, so I'll live for however much longer I live. I will never watch my club play in the Champions League. That
You might.
I fully,
You might.
yeah, maybe. I bet Brighton fans never expected to see their team in Europe. So, hey, could happen.
Um, and our very own Tom Hill keeps it real with how worried was Ben when Borat FC equalised against Wales. Look, we're always going to get a result. We're playing now. Like I'm doing this pod. I'm sacrificing watching us play North Macedonia 0-0 at half
Why are they
time.
still
Brilliant.
playing? Didn't they just do like a tournament or
It's
whatever?
4 hours.
I'm so confused how this
No,
game even works.
yeah, I wasn't. I mean, it was a blow, but I always felt we had enough to win. Tom, so shut your face, basically. Um, should we talk about the posh now? Should we talk about Peterborough for like the last 2 minutes of the pod or whatever?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about the
Right.
posh.
Let's do a preview now then. Right, so welcome back to the final part of episode 413. Weird one. It's been a weird one. It's been really odd. And it's something that I never thought I'd have to do as a Reading fan. Certainly not like co-host of this pod, but here we are. We've tried to make sense of it. What we do better at, I guess, is the football analysis. We are playing Peterborough this weekend, 29th of March, 3 p.m. kickoff at the Stade d'SCL. Um, Weird team, Peterborough, this season, Ross.
Yeah.
Very, very strange. I mean, we go into it in all right form. I say that, but
No, good
10 games.
form, actually. Sorry, after we spoke last week, I posted on Blue Sky out of the top six, or out of the contenders for the playoffs, only Charlton have a better record than Reading over the past five. So Reading are in good form, even versus the rest of the playoff teams. It's weird. Draws don't feel that great for fans, but at the end of the day, they do keep that points total ticking up, and Reading have kept that points total kicking up for 10 games in a row now.
Yeah. Well, Peterborough are going nowhere very quickly. 45 points. 15th in the table. They're not going to get playoffs. They're not going to get relegated. Highly unlikely they'd get relegated anyway, given the form and consistency of the teams below them. Um, I mean, Darren Ferguson's still the manager. I guess that's something, isn't it?
It
Really, they've
is
not had to
remarkable,
shift him
yeah.
off for the 17th time just yet. Do you do you see a home win?
Oh yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, Peterborough have been picking up some wins in recent weeks. They've started to, kind of pull out of the malaise that they had a really odd season. They are expecting to be higher up, and I know that their owner is always quite, he aims pretty high, and have been speaking about that at the start of the season too. It's a weird season. They lost their Tyler Binden-esque center back at the start of the year. They had a guy who was young, quick, good with his feet and stuff like that. So, I hope that's not a portent of what's to come for us when we have to learn this kind of stuff. I'm happy that this is coming after the international break, though, because hopefully some of that momentum that they had is a little bit curtailed. But yeah, God, Darren Ferguson, that man has been around that team
He
for
was
so long.
he was pretty outspoken the other week
Oh
about,
yeah.
said it was the softest group of players he's ever managed at the
Oh
club,
wow.
and it wasn't
Positive.
it wasn't great viewing. Yeah, it wasn't great viewing at all. Look, they got some goals in them. They have got some goals in them. They got Mothersill. I think he's on 11 or 12. Poku, he's only played 20 games. I think he's on 10, 11 as well. So they got some goals in him. Jay Jones, I think he's on about 8 or 9. So they've got some players in it.
Also back in the EFL Trophy final, uh, which is odd
Mm,
against Birmingham, which is one you'd expect more, there. But they won it. They're the holders currently, I believe. Or is that Wickham are the holders currently? I'm not 100%
I
sure.
know.
I
No idea.
don't no idea. Do you care about winning that? Would you want to win the EFL
Yeah,
Trophy? Yeah. Okay.
100%. 100%.
It was a good. I remember when Southampton were on their way back up, and it was the Johnson's Paint Trophy. Winning that was like the first thing they won on their way back to relevance and all that kind of thing. With a team that included Jose Fonte, Adam Lallana, and Ricky Lambert at that time, by the way, which was great. So
Big players.
big players, especially I love Jose Fonte, one of my favorite players who never played for Reading. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, Peterborough, weird season. They are somewhat, dangerous, in that they have talent and they have, kicked on a little bit in the last few months. But it's probably good that it's coming after the international break so that, we can hit them with a little less momentum, I would say.
I I think one of the things that this group of players has shown is that whenever there has been a setback off the pitch, they tend to rise to it off. And when the I say the first, but the Coig attempt failed, that was a really difficult period for everybody. But I remember as a fan just being invested in what was going on the pitch. And actually, I really can't wait for Saturday because it's been 2 weeks that the players have desperately needed to rest, and hopefully we'll see some more players back on Saturday, at least in the squad. But I can't wait to just focus on football on Saturday. I really can't, given everything that we're going through. As I said earlier, we set this pod up and we were like, right, this is what we're going to do. We're going to talk about this, and then the accounts drop, and it changes the complexion of everything. And it's constant. And I've tried to stay off kind of both social media sets because I just don't want to get involved in a lot of that stuff. Like I don't want to read it. Like I don't want to see it at the moment. I just want the resolution done.
It's like keeping up with American politics. Honestly, it is. It's the
No,
same
see?
thing. Like there's a new miserable story to read every, 24 hours about
Yeah,
Reading and about the state of our government over here.
yeah. And there is so much negativity in the world anyway. But football always provides that escape, always. Whether we are rubbish, whether we're indifferent, whether we're absolutely brilliant, like football is the thing that binds us all together as a fan base. And I just think come Saturday, it won't be a big crowd again because it's just not been that way. We're running out of home games now to make it count. If we're serious about the playoffs, and we said this last week, we've got to win these games. We have to win these games to keep pace. If we do, there's a chance we go to sixth if results go our way. So I'm really looking forward to just getting back in the stadium and just watching football. I really
Yeah.
am,
Yeah,
and
for
just
sure.
putting all that other stuff just to the side for what, 2, 3 hours. So
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure. I
I'm,
think it'll be
I'm
nice I think you're right too that the players have reacted before when there have been like moments like this earlier in this season and the season before. This group of players likes to go out and try and give a reaction, I think. I feel like this team is at its best when it's trying to give a reaction to something and at its worst when it's just made a
yeah.
good performance, or put a good performance together sometimes. But yeah, no, and that was actually the last thing I'll say about this Kuig podcast before is that he did actually take the time to call out how well Noah Hunt is doing with the team, which I thought was quite funny. And yeah, it will be great to have them back. I'd like to see the front three solidified for the run-in. I think that things can change behind them. We've talked about wanting Elliott back, wanting Mbenge back, and having either of those guys back on the bench this weekend would be great. I think having Mbenge back is vital to the playoff run in, and having Elliott back would just make it a lot easier. Because again, it's just a case of can we actually get to 2 to 3 goals in a game rather than
Yeah,
having
exactly.
to sit on one. I think Elliott would make a difference there. So yeah, although I'd like to go look at his sort of like expected assists generated versus Charlie Savage versus Nibs versus the other players. I suspect Ben Elliott will be highest up there, but I also suspect that Savage would probably be higher up than Nibs, just because of the nature of some of his deliveries and the fact that he delivers set pieces and things like that. But yeah, I think now that we've got this run in to the end of the season, I'd like to see them at least solidify the front line, go with Kelvin on the left, Wareham in the middle, and Chem on the right, and just work that now, and
It
not
has
try
to
and mess
work.
with
They have to
things.
make it work as
Yeah,
a group of players, individuals. They have to make it work. Now we've got what, 9 games left, 8 games left, something like that. And
yeah.
actually, they just have to make it count until the end of the season.
At the end
No,
of the
no
day,
one else
we need goals from
show.
that group now. Like what there's performances, and we talked about Chem, still performing pretty well, but kind of tailing off production wise a little bit so far this year. And Kelvin, still he got his goal fairly recently that kind of fell at him and that he turned into a really nice finish. Um, I think, and we've seen Wareham misfire, but also get himself into great positions and probably be the best at the
Yeah.
other important items that a striker does during the game. So, yeah, I think the goals are what we need right now, and chopping and changing in the last 8 weeks isn't necessarily the
Not gonna
best
help.
thing. I want to see the front three build up some chemistry and get a sense of what it is they should be doing together now.
Well, that game is live, as we said, in South Reading, 3 o'clock kickoff. None of this 12:30 nonsense.
Yep.
Good old 3 o'clock Saturday kickoff. It's
Love it.
exactly what we need. Hopefully a win. Before we go, massive congratulations to friend of the show, Robbie Savage, and his Macclesfield side. They are Northern Premier League champions at the
Oh,
first
they
attempt.
are.
Yes.
Wonderful. That's good to hear.
Massive.
Good for Robbie, by the way. That is quite impressive what he's done this season. Like I know,
That's
I'm sure.
incredible.
Yeah, it's great. Like you know, you love it when you see former players come back and actually do well. Like I'm a little bit invested in the fact that Frank Lampard is doing quite well at Coventry. Like I definitely think he was a useless manager in the Premier League. Don't get me wrong, but I
Mm.
do quite like that he's, I just like it when like some of these old players that you have good memories of are able to provide good memories as a manager as well. My favorite being, of course, Gennaro Gattuso, the funniest ex-player manager on the planet. Always worth a look. Anyway,
Yeah,
so
well, listen, I mean, he's done incredibly well, incredibly well, and to secure promotion, all
Robbie
the best
Savage.
clubs secure promotion this time of the year. Obviously we did it 19 years ago. Macclesfield did it on Saturday, March the 22nd. So yeah, onwards and upwards for them. Really, really good stuff. We will. Oh yeah, go on, get the dogs in.
I brought
I'm
Maisie
laughing.
in.
Like the thing is, you need to watch this on YouTube because the face of Maisie here is not one of I'm loving life.
Yeah, I apologize if you guys heard any sounds on the pod today. I've had the Bulldogs in here in the last 10 minutes or so, and they do
Is
make
she
an
all right
awful
with
lot.
that? Like she like that?
She's fine. Don't worry about it. She's having a perfectly good time. This is unfortunately the noise that French bulldogs make all of the time. So you will get
How
that.
do you know if she's happy though?
She's making noise. If she's not making noise, then oh, woe betide you, basically. But yeah, watch the YouTube version of the podcast, ladies and gentlemen, on the Tilehurst YouTube channel. For for all of you visual chaps,
I
that's the
I
way to go.
almost I almost need to take a picture. That's just hilarious. Like, hold on, let me just. That's honestly that's my new profile picture. That's amazing. That's that face
She's
is just
great.
like.
She's great.
Who's her favorite Reading player?
Oh, I think to be honest, she's a mother's girl, so she's still an Andy Carroll fan. Her mother, her mother, my wife is still regretting the day that Andy Carroll left Reading Football Club. She loved him, and try not to think about the hairstyle that both myself and Andrew Carroll have as
Right.
what her
That's
type
true.
might be. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
anyway,
Lovely dog, cracking dog.
cracking dog.
Well, I mean, it's been a whirlwind this pod. It really has.
Cat's been on the pod, but the cat, not my wife, sorry. The cat has been on the pod before, So I was like, hey, Maisie's on the pod now too.
Yeah. Oh, well,
So
look, she's behind me. She's just sitting on something she shouldn't.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we love animals on this pod, and we love Reading Football Club, and that's what we're all here for. So we hope that we have been able to kind of paraphrase some of the absolute madness that's been going on. There are so many people out there that aren't even connected to groups, but just fans of the club that have done so well to keep people informed and we try and keep up with everything in terms of being, co-host, but actually some of the information has been mind blowing to try and keep up with that. So we're really, really grateful to everybody for doing that. We're grateful to you guys for listening. We're kind of normal service as of next week, really, in terms of reviewing the games and coming back with, I say regular pods,
Right
but
back into the home stretch. All the games,
exactly.
talking about
They,
football again.
they're coming fast and thick. So
Thin
yeah,
and slow. They're coming
thin and
down the
slowed
pipe. Yeah.
everywhere. They're all there. Ross, enjoy the game on Saturday.
Thank you.
Look
You as
after the
well.
dogs, look after the snow,
Will do.
and we'll chat next week. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, ZCZ Films, and we'll see you next week. Come on, you R's.